if you raise your voice, put something in the chat, be aware that this is gonna be saved. Yes, as well, your name will be shown and displayed in the participant list. So if you don't want this, you need to exit the meeting. Otherwise, we are happy to have you. If you have any questions in regards of the presentations, to the panelists in the panels, in the Q&As or technical issues, please just type in the chat and we will help you and try to answer your questions. Next slide, please. A short overview of today's agenda. So we will have a brief welcome by Michael Hübner, the CETPartnership coordinator. And then we have some little sad news. Rosalinde van der Vlies was not able to join us live, but she did send us a very nice video and an opening note that we're gonna play back per video. And we have got a video from Pierpaolo Cazzola from the University of California diving into the report from the EC and giving us the background to inform then our first panel discussion and the Q&A to it. This Q&A session will be moderated by Henriette Spira. And the panelists will be from the Strategic Advisory Board of the CETPartnership. Then we'll have a coffee break and we will head into the second keynote by Paula Kivimaa from Finland, where we get more practical in how to transition a system. She was as well one of the co-authors of the EC report. And then we'll head into the second panel discussion with some of our TRI leads. And then we will wrap up the morning, have a lunch break, and in the afternoon, we'll have some project presentations and see how system transition is taken on by our own CETPartnership projects. Next slide, please. So I would welcome to the stage Michael Hübner, the CETPartnership coordinator. Oh, I just hear from Michael that his computer is restarting. So let's have him speed up and give the floor to him for his opening note and see if his computer manages not...
Good morning.
So, Michael, the stage is yours.
Good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, I hope that my computer will go on working. It just gave me a warning that it wants to restart, so I hope this is not happening in the next minutes. Welcome to the Clean Energy Transition Partnership Annual Conference 2025. I'm very happy to be connected to you, to more than 500 participants. At least that is what I learned from the registrations, and they are spread all over Europe, but also in countries outside Europe. I hope very much you are having a very good morning today. Normally, this requires not to check our news channels, right? So we feel it every day. We are living in a time of drastic change. The tectonic plates of world politics are shifting. Technologies capable of fundamentally changing our lives are emerging everywhere. People and nature are under pressure, increasing pressure every day due to the advancing climate change and its consequences. Admittedly, yes, the world has always been in a state of flux. Our world, our experiences, and our perception of it have also always been in a state of flux. But never before in human history have changes taken place so rapidly. Never before have they been so diverse or so fundamental. They are literally everywhere all the time, and we have never been so connected to them in such detail. They are in our pockets all the time, in our living rooms and offices, not only in the boardrooms of companies and governments. Amidst this ongoing process of change, we are attempting to guide the energy transition. Over the last few decades, we have developed clean, efficient, and affordable technologies that allow us to generate energy from sun and wind. We have learned to harness heat from within the surface of our planet, as well as from the power of ocean waves, from plants and organisms. And with these new, novel, eco-friendly technologies, we aspire to enhance autonomy, fortify the resilience of our energy networks, and reinforce the entire economic framework, all while battling climate change. Nevertheless, we have yet to answer the question of what the future energy system based on clean and renewable technologies should really look like as a whole. The topic is causing people to question their views and engage in sometimes even heated debate, whether in political discussions, sometimes in the beer pub, with protest marches, or on social media. Is it actually feasible? They are asking. Will switching to clean and renewable technologies mean a life of self-restraint and modesty for humanity in the future? Or can we realize all the fantastic ideas from comprehensive consumer goods to self-driving vehicles, drones, artificial intelligence, and human-like robots, not to mention holiday flights to Mars? Can we manage all this with these new energies? From a technical and energy system design perspective, questions arise such as how can we drastically reduce carbon dioxide emissions while ensuring a consistent, reliable, and economical energy supply with these new technologies? What must our infrastructure look like to manage a high proportion of renewable energy in the actual energy supply? How can we drastically increase energy efficiency and thus reduce the huge overall economic losses we currently incur? And how can we ensure that this transformation of our entire energy and industrial systems takes place in a well-organized manner without major economic and social crises and without losing people along the way because they no longer understand or support the complex interdependencies and changes? Responsible and contemporary research, technological development, and innovation must help find answers to these questions. And forward-thinking, up-to-date research, technology, innovation policy must establish an appropriate framework so that this contribution can genuinely be made. This involves more than just the provision of public financial resources. It also requires the formulation of appropriate questions. Furthermore, it demands suitable mechanisms for the structural processing and social utilization of the resulting knowledge. Only in this way we can make the clean energy transition help to succeed. The Clean Energy Transition Partnership is an organization comprising over 50 public sector funding partners supporting research, technology, and innovation spread across more than 30 countries, primarily in Europe, but also beyond. We build it to empower people and organizations driving a fair, clean energy transition for a climate-neutral world. We facilitate and accelerate the clean energy transition in Europe and beyond by aligning innovation priorities, pooling funding, and leveraging knowledge and experience. With our 7 thematically focused transition initiatives, we are establishing an impactful transnational innovation community that inspires action, produces internationally recognized innovations, and provides transferable solutions that can be adopted by society. To achieve this, we connect changemakers from the worlds of research, corporations, entrepreneurship, and policymaking. This year's annual conference will focus on the topic of system transition. The discussion will consider how system transition is understood in the context of research, technology, and innovation. In our morning session today, we will build on perspectives such as those outlined in the European Commission report addressing European research and innovation challenges for system transitions in energy and mobility. Alongside the report's proponents and authors, Rosalinde Vlies and Pierpaolo Cazzola, we will also hear from other experts, including our keynote speaker, Paula Kivimaa from the Finnish Environment Institute, Syke, members of our Strategic Advisory Board, and the leading experts of our 7 transition initiatives. This afternoon, you will have the opportunity to engage with CETPartnership funded projects. You will gain insights into the real-world impact of these projects and learn how they contribute to system transitions. You will have the opportunity to engage with the projects directly through moderated breakout sessions. Tomorrow, you will learn how CETPartnership hands-on investor readiness workshops help demonstration-ready projects secure funding, and how collaborative peer learning sessions enable early-stage innovators to tackle transition challenges together. My name is Michael Hübner, and I coordinate the Clean Energy Transition Partnership. As the clean energy transition accelerates, I strongly believe that there is a growing opportunity to strengthen the integration of national efforts into coordinated cross-border system transition approaches. Over the next 2 days, we will explore together how research, technology development, and innovation can contribute, and how the Clean Energy Transition Partnership can enhance its role in supporting this evolution across technologies, regions, and policy frameworks. Thank you very much for joining us and for giving up your time. And I don't mean the person sitting next to you in the neighbor office next door, or the person behind another screen. I mean you. Without an active listening and contributing audience like you, all our presentations and discussions would be meaningless. The Clean Energy Transition Partnership is committed to empowering the connect your bold and innovative endeavors to build an energy system that works.
Thank you, Michael. You made the race against your computer. That's great. So we did not lose Michael. Thank you, Michael. As said before, Rosalinde is not able to join us in person today, but with an opening note and statement via video. And so virtually I hand over to Rosalinde now, and looking forward to her opening statement.
Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to join you, albeit virtually, for the Clean Energy Transition Partnership Annual Conference 2025. Let me begin by sincerely thanking the organizers and all the partners behind this event for their outstanding work in advancing Europe's clean energy transformation. Your cooperation, your expertise, and your commitment truly makes a difference. Ladies and gentlemen, the transformation of our energy system is not a choice, it's a necessity. To reach climate neutrality, we must deliver clean energy in sufficient quantities and at affordable prices, while at the same time strengthening Europe's industrial competitiveness, reducing energy bills, and ensuring our security of supply. We need to accelerate our efforts because the climate crisis, the pressure on our industries, and today's geopolitical realities all demand a faster action. The clean energy transition is not only about technology. It's about Europe's prosperity, resilience, and sovereignty. As the Draghi report rightly underlines, innovation is the main driver of Europe's green transformation and competitiveness. And according to the International Energy Agency, about 1/3 of the emission reductions needed by 2050 will come from technologies that are not yet on the market. Our future depends on the innovations that we create together today. The SET plan already provides a solid foundation, but we must go further and move from lab to fab, turning research results into real products made here in our own Europe. That's why next month we will adopt a renewed SET plan governance for a clearer strategic vision, stronger coordination of research and innovation, and deeper national commitments to invest in clean energy innovation. Its new scope will also cover other issues like accelerating market uptake, accelerating scaling up, and focusing on domestic manufacturing, so that Europe not only invests in clean technologies, but also produces them here on our European soil. The Clean Energy Transition Partnership is one of the biggest successes of the SET plan. Together, you bring together over 45 national and regional program owners of more than 30 countries, committing around 500 million euros in national funds, which are topped up by EU support to reach 700 million euros in total. This collaboration shows how Europe can work at its best by working together. I particularly value the knowledge community and the impact network, which help ensure that research results reach the market and deliver real concrete benefits for our citizens and industry alike. The SET partnership also looks beyond Europe, collaborating, for example, with Mission Innovation under the Green Powered Future mission. Because the climate challenge is global and Europe's leadership grows stronger when we act with partners around the world. I warmly invite you all to join us at this year's SET Plan conference in Odense, Denmark, that is taking place on the 4th and 5th of November. It includes a fascinating site visit to the Vestas plant in the Odense port. We must continue joining forces to build a clean, efficient, secure, and affordable energy system for our planet and for Europe's prosperity and security. Let us keep developing technologies that will drive this transition, but also focus on bringing them to the market, scaling up, and producing them here in Europe. You, the SET Plan community, are at the heart of this mission. You turn vision into action. You turn innovation into impact. As the inventor Nikola Tesla once said, the future is ours to shape it if we use our imagination and determination. Together, let us shape that future, powered by clean energy, by European innovation, and by your continued cooperation. Thank you very much, and I wish you a very successful event.
So I would like to extend my thanks to Rosalinde for her very strong and inspiring opening statement, and to dive more into the report and the finding of the received report of research and innovation challenges for system transitions in energy and mobility. We will now share a video by Pierpaolo Cazzola that has been shown already last year, but this is a real deep dive into the report and gives you all the information that will inform our next panel discussion. So technical team, please play the video of Pierpaolo. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be here. And I hope I can live up to the challenge of introducing you to this work, and also on behalf of the other authors. Frank will be here later for the panel, and I'm tasked here to walk you through our findings. So I'll start with the outline. So we looked into 4 contextual changes in an evolving world. We also looked into key challenges for energy and mobility systems and associated research and innovation policies. We outlined a vision and overarching policy objectives, and then based on that, we identified research and innovation priorities for energy and mobility. And then indeed we came up with policy recommendations and concluding remarks. This is what I'm going to talk through during this presentation. I'll start from the contextual changes in a changing world. So we started by flagging the need to accelerate low carbon transitions. Actually, the evolving developments regarding low carbon transitions, in particular on renewable electricity technology, solar PV, photovoltaic, wind, heat pumps, and also on the evolving developments regarding electric vehicles and their costs. The second change has to do with competitiveness, evolving supply chains, and deindustrialization risks. So we live in a world where clean and low carbon energy became a driver of a global innovation race, and we flagged that with major powers, EU, China, and the US, all developing, stepping up their efforts regarding industrial policy. There's also a security change that we flagged. This relates with global geopolitical tensions and increases that we have seen in that space, and so leading to security risks, and that relate not just with historical energy resources such as natural gas, but also new resources, in particular minerals and technologies that are needed for the transition, and we think we flagged here batteries. The fourth change relates with societal acceptance and justice, so equity. The issue here is that environmental policy and low carbon innovation are subject to societal resistance in some places, and because they may be paired with equity challenges. So it's going to be important to navigate this additional change, so this societal change, and we flag here the need to take that into account. These changes are also have been also identified by major reports that have been already mentioned. The LETA report, which clearly flags the changes in the international scenarios, the competition, the resurgence of power politics, the Draghi report, which has been focusing specifically on the competitiveness challenges for Europe and calling for a new industrial strategy to accelerate decarbonization, focus on innovation, and achieve a better alignment of fiscal, trade, and foreign policies. Ursula von der Leyen also highlighted in a political guideline the role of science and technology in this space, so research and innovation as a key pillar of what can help Europe overcome the challenges associated with these changes. And the HATA report includes a strategic recommendation on maximizing the impact of EU research and innovation programs. So we built on this and focused specifically our thoughts on the topics of mobility and energy. So what you listen today, it's essentially our reflections given these contextual changes, but with specific thoughts on energy and mobility. And so paired with these changes, we identify challenges going forward. The first one is on the need to accelerate low carbon transition. And so the challenge there is to ensure that we can continue to achieve progress in reducing the carbon intensity of our economy in the EU. The second challenge is related with competitiveness, supply chain, and industrialization. The issue there for Europe is the fact that it's not only just a risk; it's a fact of the EU falling behind with respect to major competitors, in particular China. The chart here shows the number of clean energy patents developed over the course of the past 25 years, and clearly this shows a gap, and it's just one of the key indicators that we flagged to see the issue of Europe falling behind. We also identified challenges related with security and social acceptance, so related with the changes we mentioned before. The issue related with security is the impact. So the challenges related with the technology transition and the impacts on international relations. There are aspects also related with dual use. The technology transition also affects technology that have relevance for the military space, not just the civil space. So it's important to make sure that we master the transition, we navigate this transition in a way that doesn't leave us deprived of capacity to have domestic capabilities to respond in case of security threats. And also climate change itself is also seen as a security issues from a military standpoint. Regarding social acceptance and justice, we have seen these translating into evolving political developments, increased populist politics, which risk to weaken proposals to promote a positive agenda on innovation and environmental policies, and including proposals to consider degrowth, sufficiency and well-being, which have positive sides, but also come with risks related with the need to seize opportunities from growth to actually cover the cost of social welfare, low carbon transition, and defense upgrades, as well as equity-related challenges. So these are the key challenges we've been considered, and based on all this, we outlined the following vision for the future of the EU energy and mobility systems. So we recommend, so we essentially charted this way forward, looking at systems that need to be low emission, cost competitive, energy and resource efficient, integrated and flexible. We consider that this system need to involve a significant degree of European manufacturing. That's also relevant from, in particular from that security standpoint mentioned earlier. We consider that the energy and mobility system need to be reliant on diversified supply chains, and that the capacity to manufacture domestically low carbon technology needs to grow, given the gap seen so far. And we consider the need for this system to deliver other societal benefits, including cleaner air and improved affordability, so also to be capable to address the equity challenges. For this purpose, we identified 9 innovation pathways. They are listed here in the table. So these are include system integration enabled by digital technologies, infrastructure innovation, decarbonizing electricity production, in particular with solar PV and wind, since they are cheaper technologies. Then the transition regarding low and medium temperature heat in building and in buildings and industry, which is specifically related with energy, part of the energy and mobility space. Electric vehicles and electric vehicle batteries, which are relevant also for the mobility side. Biofuels, hydrogen, and hydrogen derivatives, as well as social innovation and mobility as a service. So I'll go through each of these on a high level. Each of the following slides will have a table and some summarizing text. I will not, so the tables summarize our recommendations, our consideration regarding research and innovation actions. I will walk you through without getting into the full detail, and I'm sure there will be chances to continue to debate this in the following panel. So regarding the system integrations, which is the first item that we have, the first pathway we have considered, the key points on this is that it has a significant potential to accelerate low carbon transitions, also in a way that helps achieving better competitiveness. We see challenges for the EU because of the lag with respect to US and China in hardware and software. But we also see capacity in the EU to lead, let's say, or have a significant role in terms of seizing the opportunities from system integrations. There are, on the security side, there are pros and cons. There are risks and vulnerabilities, in particular related with cyber attacks for what concerns digital technologies. And regarding social acceptance, we see issues which are still relatively limited, but that could increase if digital technologies end up increasing inequalities. And so in that case, social acceptance will be will be a challenge. Challenges related with social acceptance will grow, and this needs to be managed. So based on this, we did identify priorities on basic RNI, apply and deployment-oriented RNI. This has been a leitmotif across the whole report. Regarding infrastructure innovation, we flagged the importance of these to adapt industrial capacity to technology shift. We flag in particular the importance of enhancing electricity grids in light of demand growth with the transition. For mobility, we also looked into infrastructural choices that consider reallocation of road space, street redesign, so aspects that relate with the role of different modes of transport. These are crucially linked with infrastructure-related choices and related research in order to optimize the way this can develop. And we also considered infrastructure innovation with respect to their role in terms of resilience in case of conflicts and with respect to the challenges related with climate change, climate-related hazards, and the need to anticipate them. We have seen very recently in Spain major impacts, and so infrastructural innovation also need to be capable to handle those kind of challenges. A third pathway I have listed here is decarbonizing electricity with solar PV and wind. So these I mentioned earlier are key technologies because they are low cost and low carbon at once. They can actually be instrumental to increase competitiveness. They are an opportunity in this respect. There are also challenges because the cost of solar PV and wind depend on endowment, and there are other parts of the world with high endowment. So Europe may be exposed to risks of being outcompeted in other parts of the world when it comes to technologies related with solar PV and wind, or electricity generated from those. There is also a strong advantage acquired by China, in particular for solar PV manufacturing, less so in wind turbine manufacturing, where the EU has been traditionally leading, but its leadership is eroding. We see a general energy security advantage from renewable energy, in particular solar PV and wind, but also risks, and the risks are related with new supply chains, the fact, let's say, the competitive disadvantage acquired, characterizing the EU system compared with other global competitors so far. And on the social acceptance, we see generally a positive attitude, although there could be challenges, especially if the EU doesn't seize opportunities to boost its own industrial development by intercepting positively the development of these technologies, which will be crucial for the growth of to achieve let's say, the alignment with net zero ambitions of the European political agenda. I have one more slide here on low and medium temperature heating buildings and industry. This links in particular to heat pumps. So this is an area where, given the possibility to leverage low temperature heat at low cost, despite higher investment costs, heat pumps could actually become a key booster of European competitiveness. Europe also has a sizable share of global heat pump manufacturing. This is important also from an industrial perspective. So heat pumps can be key to reduce energy security risks because they would rely on domestically produced renewable electricity and domestically available heat. They also face challenges related with the endowment and the differences between the EU and other parts of the world. And there's this issue of the higher upfront costs that are relevant for equity-related challenges and come also with social acceptance implications. So these will need to be addressed, and research and innovation can also help with that. A fifth item we identify are electric vehicles and electric vehicle batteries. So clearly electric vehicles are crucial for what concerns the transition of low carbon transition of mobility. They offer major opportunities for greenhouse gas emission savings, also energy efficiency improvement. They can be steered also towards being an asset rather than a liability for electricity grids, so they can come with systemic advantages and lower costs for the system, which is good for competitiveness. The key issue is the fact that on electric vehicles and batteries, China has also gained, similar to PV, solar PV, a competitive advantage. So it's going to be key to make sure that electric vehicles will become an opportunity also for European industrial development. And achieving this is something that will definitely benefit from research and innovation action, but as in the case of solar PV, we'll also need complementary policy, a whole of government approach to actually succeed. Last bullet here is on the equity-related challenges of EVs, also related with high capital costs. It will be important also to shift let's say, the offer of EVs across a wider range of vehicles to respond to that, and research and innovation can also help in that respect. Sixth pathway, biofuels. So they are already part of the road transport fuel mix today. They are a greater part in sectors related with road, and not as much in other sectors like aviation and shipping. They have a capacity to abate greenhouse gas emission, but that depends on the pathway of production. Key points that we flag in the analysis is the need to try to avoid focusing them on modes where they could be outcompeted by other solutions, in particular electrifications. So we flag the importance of a shift towards aviation and shipping. We see them as valuable to help handling risks of asset stranding for combustion-based technology, but as I said earlier, this is only true if electrification would not outcompete them. So that's a challenge, definitely something to be taken into account. The social acceptance is generally positive, but also dependent on risks related with land use requirements, because biofuels do tend to come with larger land use requirement compared with other low emission technologies. Hydrogen. So we have a full pathway regarding this with, let's say, mixed messages. Currently, hydrogen is entirely produced, I would say, almost entirely produced from natural gas, and it's not a low carbon energy carrier. So there needs to be a shift towards a low carbon energy production. This is technically feasible, and it can offer energy diversification opportunities, but it also comes with challenges, in particular related with lower efficiency compared to with direct electrification. Hydrogen, we see it as an option that can compete effectively to decarbonize chemicals, fertilizers, and steel making. Those are probably the sector where the research and innovation actions can help with the deployment, on the deployment side, and acceleration. For buildings and transport, we flag several assessments that are skeptical on a quick adoption of hydrogen as an energy carrier because of greater competitiveness of electrification, especially when it comes to, in the case of transport, in the case of road. There could be other applications, again, where electrification has less capacity. Hydrogen could become instrumental to lower especially low carbon hydrogen, to lower the carbon intensity of fuels, and this is especially relevant for shipping and aviation. There are potential social acceptance risks related to safety and environmental risks. Hydrogen is a greenhouse gas itself, so it's important to manage leaks. Research and innovation actions need to respond to these kind of considerations. Regarding I have two more slides on the pathways. The 8 is on social innovation. So social innovation has a potential to address institutional and user-based barriers to sustainable transitions. I've been contributing to suggest a more radical transformation of societies. They come with security advantages because they can enable reduced demand of energy and resources. But they also come with challenges because they may also induce lower growth. And so lower growth means not only that this may not resonate with the wider public, but also that this could lead to lower fiscal space to handle equity-related transition. So there are pros and cons, and it's important for research and innovation actions to increase and improve the understanding that we have of these dynamics, and in order to maximize the benefits that can be achieved from social innovation and reduce potential drawbacks. One last pathway is specifically focused on mobility as a service. So we frame this as a specific case of social innovations. This is based on a single digital customer interface to source and manage travel-related activities. It aims essentially to improve the integration of public transport mode and other ways to move around, including commercial transport services. Whether or not MaaS can lead to emission reduction really depends on its capacity to take people away from more carbon-intensive modes towards less carbon-intensive modes. There is a mixed record regarding this. Generally speaking, as long as MaaS boosts the, let's say, the interest, the appeal of public transport, it can achieve that. MaaS is in public transport in general relate with local services, so they are less vulnerable related to in terms of supply chain disruptions. Still reliant on digital infrastructure, so exposed to cyber attack. And generally speaking, as this is something that can foster an equitable way to move around and also in an affordable manner, we don't see MaaS as something that is particularly exposed to social acceptance problems. So the research and innovation action need to try to maximize, again, the benefits that can be acquired, the capacity of MaaS to lead to net savings in greenhouse gas emissions and to enhance, let's say, better equity, more equitable access to mobility. I'm almost done. I have a couple of slides on our conclusions. So based on all these analyses. So the first one is that we consider the need, we recommend to increase public research and innovation support in a strategic manner with a focus on achieving price and performance parity to leverage the power of markets. Some of the points made earlier, in particular, for example, on the capacity of hydrogen to be competitive in some sectors rather than another, is something that I think relates very closely with these. A key question is, can we afford research and innovation support for options that stand little chances to actually be competitive? Should we rather focus on spending public money on cases where we do see structurally greater chances? And our answer is yes, that is probably a better idea. Even though there is still a role for research and innovation to make sure that it can help us achieving a faster development, like by seizing new generations of technologies, and so move faster in trying to make sure that we can achieve also a more diverse offer of technological options. The second bullet is the need to find a new balance between the protection of existing assets and the creation of new assets. One example there could be biofuels. Biofuels could be a way to save, let's say, existing assets, combustion related, by basically lowering the carbon intensity of the fuels. The key challenges are, can we supply enough for that? Or, and will this option be cost competitive against other solutions, in particular electrification? The risk there is that by focusing only on technologies that protect existing assets, we completely miss the next generation of technologies and we get outcompeted on those. So Our assessment is that there is a need to look more into seizing opportunities from next generations. I'm thinking in the case of biofuels on electric mobility, missing opportunities to actually seize the positive side. Also from an industrial development perspective, on electric mobility would be a big risk. I have two more bullets here on the need to align basic research for disruptions, applied research and innovation as a key enabler of change, and then also complement these with deployment-focused research and innovation actions to scale up resilient innovation, so innovation that have high chances to be in large demand. The final bullet here is on specific research and innovation action regarding social innovation, and the idea of aligning social innovation with environmental security benefits, and also a better understanding of the dynamics of systemic transitions. Last slide with the last four bullets. So the first one here is on the need to align research and innovation actions with other policy tools that address specific weaknesses, in particular to correct market failures in cases where the market does not deliver in investing in areas where there could be, that come with better competitiveness and essentially offer opportunities to bridge some of the challenges we flagged. So these may involve strategic infrastructure-related choices. We have a bullet on the need to take specific research and innovation actions on social innovation and sorry, this is a mistake. It was already covered earlier. And we have a bullet on the importance to consider institutional changes to leverage large-scale opportunities, including better coordination between the EU and its own member states. We flag risks related with a mismatch in terms of research agendas. It's important to make sure that there is a better coordination to achieve a greater impact in that respect. And our last bullet is on the need to foster the contribution of new stakeholders, in particular startups. This links to the earlier bullet I mentioned on the need to find a new balance between the protection of existing assets and the creation of new assets. We see the role of startups as something that can help move towards a greater focus on the creation of new assets, which is important to take, to enjoy a positive dynamic driven by the growth of these new assets as they get deployed into the economy. I close here. I hope it wasn't too long, and I'm happy to hand it over to the panel discussion, and I'm sure we're going to get a lot of insightful thoughts from that. Thank you very much.
So this was very intense and compact information to inform our panel. And I would like to ask Henriette Spira, Director General of Innovation and Technology of the Federal Ministry of Innovation, Mobility and Infrastructure of Austria, to the stage.
Thank you very much, Florian. Welcome everyone to this conference, and thanks a lot for having me to moderate this panel. I will have to admit that this is a bit of time travel for me now, because you just watched a video that was that showed a presentation of a report, and I was then on the following panel discussion. I didn't moderate it. Rosalinde did, who couldn't make it this morning, but I am very happy to moderate the upcoming panel discussion. Obviously, I'm moderating not myself, but other panelists. So it would be nice if we could see everyone now. There's Berta, Eleanor, Henk, and of course, Michael, whom you already met. And what I will do now is introduce all of them to you in a couple of sentences, and then we go and start the discussion. I start with Eleanor, who is head of the Mission Innovation Secretariat. She's leading a global initiative that brings together 24 governments and partners from the private sector to make clean energy affordable, attractive, and accessible this decade. She has also held several positions associated with climate communications, including running real-world demonstrations on climate adaptation techniques. Eleanor holds a PhD in climate science. Welcome, dear Eleanor. We also have Bertha Holst-Jurgensen, who is a senior researcher at the Danish Technical University, Wind and Energy Systems. She has more than 25 years of academic and administrative experience in energy technology policy. So she's really bridging the worlds we're debating today. She is head of scientific advice at DTU Wind and Energy Systems. She's acting chair of the International Energy Agency Wind Technology Cooperation Program. Welcome, Bertha. Then there's Henk Jan Vink, who is the president of the European Energy Research Alliance, ERA. He was elected as president of ERA in April 2024, so he is already very experienced in this role. In his daily life, he says he's managing director of the Dutch Research and Technology Organization, TNO Energy and Materials Transition. He's active in many research and innovation related boards and committees, both national and international. Before entering in his position at TNO in 2022, he has held several director and senior management positions within ICT. So another person who's bridging the world. And then last but not least, I welcome back on stage Michael Hübner, who's coordinating the Central European, I'm sitting in Vienna. See, this is what happens when you moderate an online session. The Clean Energy Transition Partnership, of course, as a coordinator. And I have to admit that this is time travel number 2 now, because years and years and years ago, when Michael was already coordinating lots of energy related research partnerships, I also had the pleasure of moderating some sessions for him. So very happy to for you, Michael, to welcome me back to this role. I also have to tell you that all the lovely people I'm moderating here are members of the Strategic Advisory Board of the Clean Energy Transition Partnership. So just as a kind of warm up, because we've all been thrown into this room without even shaking hands before, so they haven't seen me and I haven't seen them, I want to ask them why they are part of the Strategic Advisory Board and why they think it's important. Bertha, maybe you want to start.
Yeah, I think it's a civil obligation to participate in such board and provide the best advice based on my professional experiences.
Thank you so much, Bertha. Eleanor, what about you? We cannot hear you.
Yes, thank you. Hopefully that's okay. Thank you very much for the generous introduction, Henriette. So for me, I find the CETP to be a critical mechanism for bringing together innovation priorities with an actual funding mechanism. So it's bringing ideas to life for Europe, but also beyond. And I think that their collaboration model is excellent, and it's something that Mission Innovation work very closely with. So thank you for the opportunity.
Lovely. And I will ask you about the Beyond Europe, of course, Eleanor. Henk, why are you part of the Strategic Advisory Board?
It's out of belief, I would say, because I strongly believe that we should defragment our efforts on R&D in Europe if we want to make a change, to China, to the US. So these kind of partnerships are crucial if we want to keep up with the rest of the world.
And now I finally get to ask Michael what I always wanted to ask him. Why are you doing this, Michael? I'm his boss, I have to disclose, right? But he's leading this large team all over Europe, putting lots of energy into it. Why?
Yes, because I really believe that working, so, and I mean, you know that I'm combining this also with my national activities that I didn't have much time the last years for, but where I try to work on the very regional level. And I strongly believe that this acting on a very local and regional level, where we can understand system transition very hands-on and linking all these engagement globally at least in Europe, but hopefully globally, is a key for managing this transition that we have to do as mankind as a whole. No one can do it alone.
Well, thank you so much for telling me that. What we want to do with this panel transition is really taking the theme of this conference, Europe's system transition. I'm not sure whether you could have also called it revolution, how research and innovation policy and market design and societal acceptance come together at scale. And that's also something I liked about the report. Florian already said it's quite dense, but at least it tries, and with all the transition pathways, tries and bring together lots of different topics, also at lots of different levels, which we need to tackle in order to move forward. Birte, I will start with you. I will start with you as someone who's deeply engaged, obviously, in research. What do you see as the most critical research priorities if we really want to move from sectoral innovation to truly integrated energy system? Where should Europe invest its R&I effort to accelerate this shift, and also maybe keeping at the back of our mind something the presentation just mentioned? If we focus too much on the now, on the here and now, are we missing out on the next or on the new? What's your take on this, Birte?
Well, it's a huge question, but I think what we should do is to continue, and Europe really is very good of cooperating and coordinating different policies, the market pull policies with the technology push or the research and innovation policies. That's crucial in order to make a system transformation. And instead of having this very divided split between basic research and applied research and deployment, I would rather think of mission-driven research and innovation that will make transformation happen. So in the real world, I think there's a lot of dynamics across the knowledge value chain from basic research to deployment, and that should be nurtured in order for transformation to happen.
That's a very nice, I think I said the same thing on the panel last year, Birte, because also here in Austria, what we try and do, obviously aligned with the European and global levels, implement something we call a transformative innovation policy, really very mission driven. I wonder whether you have a concrete example. Where does it work well? Do you have something for us? Combining these different policies. Is there something that springs to mind where you say this is where it worked really well?
Yeah, I think actually now with the large ambition to build out offshore wind in European waters, we see that there's a lot of going on in order to design the calls for offshore wind, and countries learn from each other how to do that in a proper way with contracts for difference. But in order for developers to invest in the large-scale build-up, there should also be a proper infrastructure. So the Danish island of Bornholm is a concrete example with an energy island that has the ambition to not only produce a lot of offshore wind, but also transform that into hydrogen, and not for the Danish market, but really to deliver electricity, but also hydrogen to the German markets. So the European Commission has granted more than 600 million euro for an interconnection between the Danish island of Bornholm and Germany as a first important step to make that happen, to attract the necessary developers, to minimize the risk, to make it attractive. But there's a lot of unknowns related to the energy island, and here is where the research comes in, and there's a lot to be done.
But thank you so much for taking us to the shores of the Baltic Sea and also to a very concrete example in Bornholm. Henk, I already introduced you as an experienced president of the European Energy Research Alliance. Of course, you have a unique view now of how research networks contribute to Europe's energy transition. How can alliances like the ERA strengthen the continuity, or as Berta also just said, it's not about basic research demonstration deployment in kind of silos, but it's kind of all in one. How can a network like yours strengthen this continuity and how to make sure that it's all in one, and also make sure that obviously these efforts align with the bigger, larger European goals we have? I'm sorry, people, I have big questions for you, but it's your choice to answer them in the way you wish. Hank.
Well, thanks a lot. Yeah, in ERA, we try to do this, of course, by connecting researchers from all over Europe. And we have 250 universities, RTOs, collaborating in joint programs on the different set technologies that are in the set plan. But what we also see is, of course, that the integration of this technology is much more important. The acceptance, societal acceptance of this technology is much more important, well, to scale up and to make the innovation really work. So we try to create roadmaps for that, as said, with researchers from all over Europe. But at the same time, we should advocate within the European Commission and within our member states that the instruments that we need to do real mission-driven research, where you really can connect the dots, well, from the European Investment Bank to basic research and everything in between, that the instruments are in place there. So we set up concrete roadmaps, we deliver concrete research results, and we advocate for better instruments, I would say.
So let me probe you on this one, because I guess a lot of people are aware that there's very big discussions at the European level now at, how to move integrated research forward. The European Commission proposed the next multi-annual financial framework, proposed ideas on the next framework program, on a European competitiveness fund, all of us member states now trying to make sense of it. So Hank, when you say you come up with concrete proposals and propose instruments, are you being heard now? Is it difficult to get into that debate, or how do you actually go about it in a very practical manner?
Of course, we discuss a lot with people from the Commission, but as we are a large community, our members also discuss with their specific member states representatives. So I think this is like an oil spot spreading out, I would say. And of course, you influence each other along the way, and what's realistic and what's not realistic. So I think there is definitely influence, as there is an influence coming from the Clean Energy Transition Partnership as well, I would say. We should strengthen our efforts here.
Thanks a lot. I'm actually getting, I don't know about you, but I'm getting positive vibes, which is nice, because Michel at the beginning of this conference today alluded to the big system change and how never in our lives. I actually have to tell you, I had dinner with my 15-year-old last night, and she said, "Mom, we always think that things are changing as they have never before, but don't people always think that?" So I think it's good to get your positive vibes, Hank and Berta, because it also takes away the fear from changing things and actually makes us go concrete next steps, which is very needed, not only in a European level, but also at a global scale, which is why I'm so happy that Eleanor is here too, because mission innovation, and Austria is also quite active, I think Michel too, active in setting this up, was really created to foster global cooperation on clean energy innovation. Which lessons, Eleanor, from global collaboration could help Europe accelerate its own R&I-driven system transition?
Thank you very much. Yes, Austria is a very valued member of Mission Innovation. So I think that question, changes over time in terms of lessons learned. I think at the moment there are a lot of rich lessons that we're learning in the geopolitical landscape. So, for example, one of the key things where I think Europe has a key role to play is within geopolitical leadership. And this is around energy security and also things like inclusivity. So we've talked a lot about energy technology and technological innovation. And I think, of course, that's very important. I think at this specific time, the world is looking to Europe for some leadership, especially where the clean energy transition, it can be clean and inclusive. It doesn't have to not be clean anymore. And so I think this is where Europe can really play a key role. So, for example, on security, I think that Europe can really showcase how research and innovation can help avoid new dependencies as part of the clean energy transition, and ensuring a reliable supply for all citizens as well. I think there's a lot of cross borders within Europe, and this is often a question amongst things like AI and supply and connectivity. And Europe can address those questions head on, and the rest of the world can learn how that can be done effectively. So from a security point of view, I think Europe can really take the lead and set a good example. And then in terms of inclusivity as well, so as I mentioned, that the transition can be clean, it can be reliable, and it can be for everybody. And I think that the CETP is really leading the way in setting this example, and of course reflective of the wider European policies. And I think that it's starting to get there, but I really think that Europe can showcase leadership around all elements of the clean energy transition, and which includes things like social innovation, behavioural change, and also governance, which is something that is challenging for everybody. But I think the world is looking to Europe, and now is a great opportunity for Europe to really showcase leadership across these factors, as well as technological innovation.
Do you have any favorite example for social innovation or inclusion? Because that's something you really pinpointed in your remark just now.
Tricky one. I think one of the things that is interesting to look at is the octopus example, and what they've been doing with flexibility. So I think this is a way to sort of bring the cost of bills down a little bit, and also to engage society with their consumption of electricity. So it kind of makes that connection between the electrons coming into your house and the amount that you're spending on that electricity. So I think the way that Octopus have managed it, and through their kind of apps, as well as the kind of rewards that you get for depending on kind of what flexible policy that you go for, I think that that's very effective, and that's of course in the developed world. But yes, I think that's a great example of just that entry, that just starting to connect people with that flow of energy into your house, and how much that is costing, and how if you make small decisions you can actually save yourself money, which is an important driver for a lot of people as part of this transition.
Thanks a lot for this very concrete example. And you see a sea theme here, people. So Berta taking us to Bornholm and the Baltic Sea, and Eleanor saying octopus. So it will be easy to remember this debate. Michael, in your role as a partnership coordinator, which I really hugely appreciate, because it's very important work you're doing for not only system transition, but also for us in the ministry and for Austria. The partnership was established precisely to strengthen transnational cooperation in clean energy and R&I. How do you see the partnership's role in addressing the coordination challenges that the European Commission report highlights, and that also Henk kind of alluded to in his remark? What's working and what still needs attention? Tell us what's working first. We love positive vibes in the morning at the beginning of this conference.
I think what has been really working well from the beginning was, we were starting in a time that was challenging for everyone, that was in the midst of the pandemic. And I'm happy to have Henk here. I think you had that role at that time, but ERA was playing a huge role in bringing all the research community together, and we were able to also engage all the structures that we have in the set plan, the technology platforms and so forth, to put together a joint research and innovation strategy. And built on this, we have formed these 7 transition initiatives, and some of them, I think 3 of them, are dedicated more to single technologies or single technology systems, and 4 of the others are dedicated to system integration and system transition of part energy systems. And I think that was, for me at least, a first success that we are having, that we are having these different focuses and trying really to inspire projects in these fields and guide also the research community by this, to produce a broad portfolio that is also looking into the system transition challenges themselves, and not only in single technologies. But that brings me already also to the challenge that we see, because when we see the response to our calls, we clearly recognize that it's still easier to work on the single technology than to work on the complex issue of system transition or system integration. So the interdisciplinary work, cross technologies fields, I don't want to say silos, but cross technology fields, and then even more cross, let's say, research disciplines. So how can we bring the practitioners of the human sciences into our projects? How can we fund them? These are the big challenges, I think, that we're facing in our innovation system, and this is what we need to work on.
Thanks a lot. And you touched on so many issues that kind of drive our work every day, don't they? I'm always worried about speed and scale and impact, and how do we get stuff done in the different areas. Berta, back to you. I guess we all agree, and Eleanor also said that Europe can really show leadership. There's a very strong research base. A lot of you either working at DTU, Hank working at TNO, and bringing together all the different research sectors, but obviously scaling results into coordinated European level action often remains just too slow, right? I think the speed is an issue. What do you think could help bridge this gap between excellent projects we are seeing and real system impact? Why is it so difficult to turn excellent research into coordinated action? And what do you think could help us overcome that? And now I'm not asking you for the specific example, because you already gave quite a nice one, actually, which would answer the question. But for you, kind of, what's your intervention logic when you're thinking about it in terms of making people move?
Oh, well, I like the concrete examples. Very strong enabler, in my view, is demonstration and test regions. And just to go back to another old example, when I was involved in research the hydrogen economy in the start of the zeros, I was impressed by how the clean urban transport for Europe from 2001 to 2006 actually demonstrated fuel cell driven buses and different hydrogen production and infrastructure options in 9 cities around Europe. So it created a lot of learning related to different energy systems. Our energy systems are so different, and that has to be taken into account. Urban planning, public acceptance, financing from multiple sources, and also importantly, that fuel cell buses was outcompeted by batteries. That created a lot of learning. So I really welcome living labs, regulatory sandboxes, test zones. It can have many names, but it allows the technology to be tested at scale in real setting. And we can also research incentives, business models, support schemes, tariffs, best practices, etc. I think that's a very important enabler, because otherwise we will do so many mistakes, and impact policies are costly, and that will really make the transition much more slow.
Thank you so much. And it's a really great answer. I think we're trying something similar here, Michael. We just had our large conference of our kind of 6 regions in Austria, where we really try it out and showcase. And I absolutely agree. It's very, very important to show what's working. Hank, I basically said in my second question to you that the R&I governance is quite difficult. You could also say complex at a European level. And you said that you really try as ERA to come up and propose new instruments. What new government mechanisms or funding mechanisms are still missing in your point of view to make system transitions truly systemic? Is there something we're missing?
Actually, they align a bit with what Berta just said. From my perspective, we should be prepared for success. So if you rate a project and the results of a project as excellent, you should make sure that that specific project and the partners in that project can go to the next phase of demonstration, of piloting, and in the end, can go for venture capital funding or whatsoever. So we should really prepare for success. Instead of what we do in Europe is we have an excellent project executed, and then everything start with zero again. We go to a next round of competition where everybody can apply over and over again, and we double a lot of our efforts, I would say. And I saw in the chat also somebody asking, how can ERA help avoid this doubling of research efforts? I think that's one thing that we should really learn. And also in the HITO report, I think it's been mentioned, the DARPA mechanism, which is in place in the United States, where you have a stage gate approach, and you continue if you reach your KPIs within your project. And you lose your funding if you don't deliver, but you get more funding if you deliver. And I think we should have these kind of instruments in place in Europe to really make sure that we undouble a bit more. Of course, some doubling is needed. You need some competition to get the best solutions. But in the end, for example, in the wind JP that we have, we found out that there were 47 European funded projects working on circularity of windmill blades. They were not urged to work together. They were not urged to deliver on the results that were already there. So yeah, we can do better from that perspective.
Yeah, I think I talked to Marc Lemaitre on Friday, who is Director General at RTG, and I think we will see something along those lines. They seem to be thinking quite seriously about this, but also taking you back to this to the world of current proposals, Hank. Do you think that this is what the European Commission is trying to tackle now with proposing a European Competitiveness Fund, preparing for success, which is a very nice heading?
Yeah. What I hope that they will do is they will keep the balance between what's needed from the technology push perspective and the technology pool. If we only do the last part of the innovation chain, we will lose the future perspective. So if they do it in a balanced manner, well, this could really work, I would say.
Echoing the worries of many RTOs and research organizations here. Thank you, Hank. Eleanor, you really made a point not only of social innovation and inclusion in your first statement, but also on Europe's leadership and the need to lead on a number of topics. And I guess some of the debate this year has been framed as kind of a dilemma, right? Not in terms of leadership, but more a kind of dilemma. We have these high social environmental standards on the one side, and then there's intense global competition on the other. The European Commission then proposed a competitiveness fund. Kind of, it seemed that they'd forgotten about the Green Deal. I don't think so, but it's from the way that the debate is framed, there seems to be kind of a push. From your international experience and really taking you back to your first statement of leading, how can Europe turn this, what some people see as a challenge or a dilemma, into an advantage rather than a constraint? Because there's some lively discussion in the chat ongoing, and people seem to agree that the social element is really important.
It's a great question, and I think that So speaking very honestly, I have concerns when we talk about deregulating to create kind of a more conducive landscape for investments. I think absolutely red tape is a challenge, but in order to turn that into an opportunity, I think where Europe are is they can really showcase how you can not make more problems for yourself in the long run by thinking a little bit carefully about what that kind of deregulated environment looks like. So, for example, if I'll use an example from the UK is about home building. There's a lot of deregulation going on environmental parameters. I think that is something that is causing a little bit of concern amongst many, and it feels like we're going to be creating more problems in the long run than we are. So I think it's not necessarily a bad thing that Europe has a lot of due diligence around some of these parameters. But I do think that there are some sweet spots that can be made more efficient. So, for example, those could be around financial flows and sort of de-risking on the big capex projects. And it's sort of that we've already talked in this session about the importance of demonstration, and that is very true. And there is a problem between getting from idea to demonstration, and I think that there are a few things that could be done there to help that be a little bit more efficient, and particularly around the startup level as well. So going back to Rosalinde's keynote, where she mentioned about the IEA saying that a third of technology is needed and don't exist yet, and I think that, examples like the European Innovation Council Accelerator, these are all very helpful things to try to get those 1/3 of things that we don't know about moving a little bit quicker. So there are some levers that you can use at every stage of the innovation cycle, but I don't think that we should be compromising sort of our long-term success over things like very severe deregulation. And I think Europe could be really showcase leadership in that space, particularly because you have a lot of different, in Europe, there's a lot of different geographies. It's not all the same landscape, it's not all the same physical situation. So there's a lot of success stories that will be able to come through. But if it's kind of like a blanket deregulation, I think that is something that personally for me, I do get a little bit worried about when people mention about large-scale deregulating. I think there's a happy medium to be found there. So I think within Europe, there's a lot of opportunities to showcase identifying those sweet spots for deregulating a little bit to allow those financial flows through, but just making sure that things like in the environment and people's health and well-being remains intact.
Thanks a lot. Also for a very honest answer. Personally, I always pinpointed people to the presentation of Ursula von der Leyen of the European Competitiveness Compass, and you only see in the Q&A session then how they actually show this building on the Green Deal, obviously, because the Draghi report we heard about mentions various important aspects. But do you feel, just coming back to your international rule, this possible backlash you alluded to is already impacting global collaboration? Do you see that already as kind of feedback from other parts of the world?
Definitely. And I was fortunate enough to be part of the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation discussions. So that's kind of all the countries that border the Pacific earlier this year. And certainly there was a change in dynamic in terms of the solutions available might help a energy transition, but not necessarily always clean. And I think that this is something that we're seeing talked about a little bit more, particularly around topics like clean cooking. It depends what you define as clean, and I'm speaking very, very frankly here. So I think the clean cooking topic really, for me, resembles the current discourse in the landscape, which is, yes, of course, we should be improving air quality and living standards, but it's just that definition of clean, and are there ways that we can still push to make sure that it's not necessarily a fossil-based solution. And so generally, though, on the other hand, a lot of countries have increased their ambition, and I think that definitely I'm seeing Europe be a very helpful voice in the landscape, and a very powerful voice as well. So I think there's a lot of potential here, which is why it's a great privilege to be on this call today. So thank you for the opportunity.
So heads and mood up, and also thank you about talking about the definition of clean. Austria is very adamant about this at the European level. We hate saying clean because we think it entails nuclear, which we don't like. Michel, before we go into more general Q&A session, I want to ask you a last question. And I think one thing I always learned from you is really using these partnerships as networks and bridges in a way, right? So if you think about the Clean Energy Transition Partnership, and we call it clean, so to say, between research, innovation, and policy, where do you see the next opportunity to strengthen this bridge, and also for CETP to be a good part of the debate that's upcoming?
Before answering this, I'm inspired to say that I come from a little village where we see from our houses directly to the Austrian nuclear power plant that has been built in the 70s and never gone online. So, because you're talking about this, so this is very present for me, and this is a motivator to work with in this field. How can we go on in that respect? Your question, I see a big opportunity that as we are now up and running and functioning, and we have been able over the first years in the Clean Energy Transition Partnership to establish not only structures, but also processes and procedures, how we can dynamically work with this innovation process and generating projects, but also working with the knowledge and maximizing the impact of these projects. I think that we have a big opportunity that if we could connect with other initiatives, environments like the mission innovation and its mission initiatives, or like the European set plan, and becoming much more operational in a way that we become a systemic element of this set plan, and we manage together to administrate this innovation process and change process together. I think that would be my, let's say, dream, that we as a Clean Energy Transition Partnership just don't stay like a sole initiative that creates projects and provides funds, but really becomes an integral part of this steady ongoing dialogues, and so that we can derive focuses and set real kind of impulses. So like Henk has also said before, that we don't stay just broad, but really look what is needed now, what is already there, but what is an important next step, and can really focus on this.
Thank you. And now everyone realizes that I'm a German national. At 10:30 sharp, my plan tells me that that we are about to go into a Q&A session. Florian, I ask you to come in and tell us how to go about it.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. So everybody, if you have questions, please direct them in the chat and ask questions. Please as well indicate if you want to ask somebody specific. There are a lot of statements as well, so rather phrase a question than a statement would make it easier for us. And there was one concrete question to Henk. I'll read it. Where do you see the application in national research efforts? How can ERA be better coordinated to avoid it?
Yeah, I already said some words about that one. I saw it popping up. So in my previous comment, I tried to comment on this one already. I think ERA cannot, of course, ERA cannot do this alone. What we learn within ERA is, of course, that we see a lot of doubling of efforts all over Europe, competing propositions. So we should build on the results of projects that we already had and that were successful. And I made a comparison with the DARPA model, which I think is very good. What is also really needed if you want to have such a model in place, is that you have knowledgeable people judging the project. It should not be about bureaucracy checking the boxes, but people who really understand the technology, who judge the technology, and who judge the progress that has been made. And I think there we really can learn from what DARPA is doing in the United States. So that was a comment that I already said earlier. Yeah.
What was really nice about a debate we had amongst the European research directors last week in Copenhagen was a paper that was presented by some MIT researchers on actually not only where DARPA can help, but which challenges are actually DARPable. Because very often we forget about the skills needed at project management stage, or also about the kinds of problems, whether they're actually good for a DARPA style model. And I really like this paper. I will post it in a chat because it gives us, it helps us thinking about how we can also use partnerships like the European Energy Research Alliance, but also CETP to actually do the community building work we also need to actually solve real world problems. That was a nice kind of addition to your comment on DARPA. There's another question to you, Hank, from Anton Fellinger. How can we all cheer into rocket fuel for all with implementation right into industrial thermal infrastructure? Very specific one. Any thoughts on that by you or anyone on the panel? Bear in mind, people, I saw some very specific proposals and discussions in the call. We are in the system transition session, so please don't ask anyone about a very specific technology. I don't understand the question. I don't know about you, Henk.
No, I don't understand.
Very honest.
Quite comprehensive, I would say. But what I see in the chat is, of course, that a lot of different modalities are being mentioned. So, for example, thermal infrastructure is really important, I think, and we can do better in Europe. I think there is a potential there that we really should use. Geothermal was mentioned earlier in one of the questions I saw. Deep thermal methodologies. I think we really have the wealth in our subsurface that we can use. So I think from my perspective, we need all modalities to really make sure that the energy infrastructure for Europe will work. And I think in the Netherlands, we also have this debate, should we focus on offshore wind or should we do nuclear? In the end, I think we need both. And I think that we really need all modalities. Our calculations, our models show that we really need more modalities, and this differs per country all over Europe. What kind of modalities are available and what modalities fit best in to the infrastructure available in that specific country. So let's not compete between the different energy modalities, but let's make sure that we have them all.
I want to actually, because I'm allowed to still ask questions, right, Florian? Anton seems to be happy with your answer. That's good. So I'm still allowed to ask questions, so I take the liberty. But because when I introduced you, I basically said that you bridged the world. You worked in academia, but you also worked in administration. And one thing, and well, maybe not. You just maybe not. It said on my notes. You can of course correct me. But one thing that you will know about anyways is the issue of languages being spoken by the two communities, right? Because the one thing is how you organize, how you have 47 parallel research projects on something and not manage to translate it on the impact. And then obviously you also have the issue of academia and policymakers maybe not always finding the right way to talk to each other to translate research results into policy or into impact. Is that something A, you encounter? And B, where you have any good advice for both sides to bring the two worlds together better?
In the role of coordinating our scientific advice, we are in close contact with the users of that advice, policymakers, planners, etc. And I must say that researchers, my colleagues, are actually quite good at translating very complex issues into something that can be used in a close dialogue with the users of that knowledge. And again, a concrete example, our global wind atlas is based on lots of research, meteorological data, modeling, etc. That is made publicly available by the World Bank, and it's used by planners, developers, policymakers, and they also have a lot of questions to my colleagues that then answer it. So getting this close interaction between the different stakeholders make everybody gain from it, being wiser. So the scientists, the researchers are also better in explaining the complexity to informed laypersons, and the informed layperson also get better in asking the right questions. So is that what you expected from me?
Well, I think that's an issue. I'm a translator's daughter, right? So maybe this issue particularly puzzles me, but I'm also a policymaker, and I think it really is one of the things where I feel we will benefit. I mean, there's a whole debate, science to policy, and these networks and everything. I think it always is something that it's very important to think about how to actually translate in terms of language. Gerfried in the chat touches on a very pertinent issue, which none of us can answer, but I can tell you, Gerfried, that we are thinking very intensely about it. What happens if AI is writing proposals and AI is looking at proposals? Is our system broken? I would actually frame it a bit more pertinently. Absolutely, we're thinking about that. But there is a question too. Elena, I'm really sorry to all other panelists apart from you, because you already answered the question about the dilemma of realizing a clean and sustainable energy transition in Europe under high social and environmental standards without losing global competitiveness. Henk, what do you think?
I think that we need to be realistic about this. You cannot switch it from one day to the next day. So this really takes time. But at the same time, I still believe that energy-intensive industries like petrochemic for Europe is very important for our, of course, for our military industry, but for our security of supply. And I think the ARA cluster, for example, that we have in Europe is very strong, and we should try to keep it here. But of course, there are a lot of global players there, and they leave Europe in a fast pace. So we really should. What this will do to the availability of materials that we really need, and to the availability of welfare and well-being in the longer term. So we should, I think, accept that on the shorter term, the cost will be high to keep these industries here. We should lower our energy tariffs one way or the other, which means that society has to, of course, pay for it via taxes or other ways. And this is, of course, not a popular story to tell from politicians from electoral perspective. But the real truth is, of course, that if within 10 years we've lost all this industry to the rest of the world, and we will become even more dependent, and the cost will even be higher. So we need to create a pathway, take a systemic approach. What can we do on a short term? How can we have new industry coming into place? Can we also regulate a bit more the demand side of fossil-free products like biofuels or whatsoever? And at the same time, we should help the incumbents, which are there, to still produce for Europe, because we really need it. So it's a balanced systemic approach that we need there.
Yeah. Thank you also for mentioning the pathways. I think that's a really good one. Henk, you can already check your next, and this will maybe be the last question in the chat, because it's a very long one and I'm not going to read it out. Everyone can read it. You can answer it, but I also want to pose the dilemma question to Birte. What is your take?
What? Please repeat it again.
Sorry, about the dilemma of realizing a clean and sustainable energy transition in Europe under high social and environmental standards without losing global competitiveness? I was asked to pose this to all the panelists.
I think that we need much more knowledge about our global supply chain, not only critical minerals, but also the components. And we also need much more knowledge about supply chain management from a geopolitical point of view, what to manufacture within European borders and what to rely on countries outside Europe. It could be strategic partners such as Japan, Australia, or emerging economies in Mercosur, in Latin America, South Africa, India, Indonesia, because we cannot make Europe an isolated island. We have, for the well-being of our economies, really to collaborate internationally. We have global companies that export and produce in other countries. So it's not an either or, but we have to get much more knowledge about it. And we don't have it today.
Thank you, Bert. And I guess Eleanor would wholeheartedly agree here now from a mission innovation perspective, because that's exactly what mission innovation tries to do, right? Bringing different players all over the world together. Henk, to switch to you, any funding advice for a GE biotech? It's a very specific question. I would ask you.
Yeah, it's a really specific question, and I would like to discuss how we can help here, but I have no clear answer. I don't know all the calls, and I'm not sure which call would fit the best. What we try to do within my own organization, TNO, we see, of course, that we need to go up higher. Also within TNO, in the past, we used to go up to TRL level 5, I would say. Nowadays, you see, if you really want to make sure that innovation works, we need to go further. Sometimes you go up to 6, 7. And then together with SMEs, we try to get funding, and we also sometimes deliver research. And they don't have to pay us cash, but they pay us some shares or so. So we could also elaborate on this kind of routes. But I'm not sure which instruments will be available in the coming year for this specific case in the European Union. But love to discuss.
I guess we will really see some changes ahead, because the Commission last week said, and I really hope they will publish it, that when they're looking across the kind of usual collaborative projects, they see movements from TRL 1 to 3 to 5 to 6 for most of the projects. And obviously, as Henk said, and if we want to move to the systemic transition, this panel focused on, we obviously need to go beyond that, and probably need other instruments for that, preparing for success, as Henk very nicely framed it. I think that's a really nice heading there. Well, this was it, people, for the first panel discussion of the annual conference of the Clean Energy Transition Partnership. Thanks a lot for listening to us. Thanks a lot to all the other panelists for your contributions. And I wish you a lovely conference for the rest of these 2 days.
Thank you, Henriette. Thanks to everybody participating in the discussion. We will now head into a coffee break until 11 o'clock, and then looking forward to the keynote by Paula Kivimaa. So take a nice break and see you back in a few minutes at 11 o'clock. So welcome back, everybody, after the break. I hope you had some nice coffee, maybe a small snack. And I would like to ask Paula onto the stage.
Hello. Shall I just get on with my keynote? Yes.
Good morning, Paula. Yes. I just would like to introduce you for a second. Yeah. So Paula is from the Finnish Environment Institute. Yeah. And she will give us a keynote on how to transition a system, so more application, so to say. And Paula as well was a co-author of the EC report. So she's very informed about the report itself as well, obviously. So Paula, thank you for being with us, and I would hand the stage over to you and to your presentation. Thanks for being with us.
Okay, thank you, and hi everyone. Unfortunately, I don't really see who's around. I was asked to talk about how to transition a system, and this is really based on the academic research field of sustainability transitions, but also some of the more practical lessons that has generated. So perhaps you can, yes. So basically we've, yeah, you can go on for the introduction slide. Yes, so I guess we all know that the climate change as a challenge and the need to mitigate climate change has for a long time required that we really transition our systems to become more towards zero carbon or low carbon energy systems in particular. And this is what we kind of call these sort of system level transitions, is what I also call the sustainability transitions. And of course, the energy sector has been of interest in that area for a long time, but now the geopolitical turmoil that we witnessed for the last 3.5 years, it has also actually brought forward the energy security benefits of such system level transitions. So now we're not only needing the transitions for climate change, but also for the potential security benefits. And for both, to achieve both of these goals, innovation is vital, but it's not enough that we create new technological innovations, but we also need to kind of be aware of these broader system transition dynamics that I will be talking about. Thanks. Next slide, please. So I'll start with the definition of system transitions. Yeah, we can move on to the next slide. So this is a sort of a one illustration of a widely used multi-level perspective in transitions, and it was originated by the works of Frank Hels and Johan Schott. And the idea is it kind of depicts how the dynamics between niches which generate new innovations as well as the regime level. So when I talk about the regime level, basically in the context of energy, it means the energy systems that are formed with path-dependent technologies, markets, and institutions. So we see a lot of incumbent technologies, and in particular built around, for instance, coal and oil-based energy production, and this has resulted in the sort of traditional energy markets and institutions that have been built around the fossil fuel-based system, which is now changing because of the renewable energy transition. In the multi-level perspective at the bottom, you have this kind of more radical niche innovations that could change the system. So this would be like the early stages of wind and solar power developments, for instance. But it actually, so if they manage to develop and upscale, they can enable system transitions, which we are now seeing some of the countries happening. And also the top level of the multi-level perspective is kind of this broader context for system transitions that presents both obstacles for development, but also windows of opportunity. So there, for instance, climate change, the geopolitical developments, international energy markets, different types of socio-cultural developments, and so on. Next, please. So when I refer to both, and I talk about sustainability and system transitions a little bit interchangeably, so we need these system level transitions, but in this case, I refer for them to being kind of sustainable as well. And these transitions are, in essence, processes that lead to fundamental shifts in different socio-technical systems. So it could be energy, it could be food, it could be mobility, water, different industrial systems. And what it means is that it's not enough that we have these technological changes, but these transitions involve changes along different dimensions. So it also means institutional and political changes, economic, sociocultural and organizational changes to support these developments. And that actually is what makes transitions so tricky, that even if we have the technological solutions, they might not scale up if we don't change the institutional or sociocultural or political structures alongside these changes, which we now see is gradually happening in the renewable energy side. Then during this transition, new products, services, business models and organizations can emerge, and then these technological and institutional structures undergo fundamental changes. And I think one interesting example, I think such a shift is now how the Nordic spot market for electricity has changed from 60-minute to 15-minute pricing, really to reflect that this is also something, for instance, that we need these kind of market changes to enable transit or adapt to the transitioning system. Next, please. So you're probably well aware of these, but I just wanted to bring out some of the characteristics of contemporary energy transitions, but also how they link to the social aspects. So we, of course, are talking about increases in renewable energy, energy storage, smart homes, digitalization, and green hydrogen. But also these kind of changes are not, as I mentioned, purely technological, but actually involve changes in policies, markets, and also user behavior so that they become acceptable. We need new energy and resource efficiency solutions that are then in turn supported by energy innovation or industrial policies. We're talking about electrification of heating, transport and industry, which in many places have before not been relying on energy, which then also require large investments into the electricity grid systems. Of course, phase out of fossil fuels is part of the transition, but this also means the need to have political decisions to support such phase out, because the previous institutional and political structures have been based on supporting fossil fuels. Increasing international grid connections become important, but then that also links to international relations and diplomacy. And then increasing decentralization of energy systems is also, at least somewhere some places, part of the transition. The prosumers, the ability for individual consumers to more actively take part in the energy system. And then finally, also the transition has really brought to fore this raising attention to energy justice and democracy and the role of citizens, and how the transition benefits others, but might actually create new vulnerabilities for some who cannot afford the new technologies at the outset. Next, please. In transitions, experimentation, learning and unlearning are really kind of some of the key concepts. So I wanted to talk a little bit about them. If you can move on to the next slide. So, and this of course applies to all sustainability transitions, but here I'm in particular talking in the context of the energy transition. And what the transition studies highlight is that experimentation can and should take place in different forms and scales. So of course we have the kind of experimentation associated with technological development, but we can also have different types of experiments related to how do we create new markets, for instance, in limited geographical areas, or utilizing, for instance, new kind of land use planning, spatial development experimentation, societal problem-solving experimentation, and social innovations have really come forward from the transition studies. What's really important is also this idea of deeper learning, that we actually engage with what we try to learn, so that we don't just carry out one project after the other without actually generating learning across these projects. And here, for instance, one example is how to develop solar technology, but also address opportunities and barriers for viable business models and consumer behavior. So not only looking at the technological side of things. And then this idea of transferring learning between actors, projects, and locations. And what I really like that has come across in the recent transition studies is this concept of unlearning. So while we learn new things, we might still be influenced by our kind of established ways of thinking and acting. And really transitions also mean that we would have to perhaps question our own old beliefs and reflect whether we actually have to think in a different way. And this is, for instance, rethinking how energy markets work, but also how to manage energy security. So, of course, the established way of energy security is stockpiling fossil fuels. And when we get rid of fossil fuels, how do we then manage energy security? So really unlearning these different practices we have. Next, please. There's also the experimentation, of course, takes place by many actors, but I also wanted to highlight a few governance trends for experimentation, which have been around for a decade or so. So first of all, there's this idea of experimental governance culture that, for instance, Finland's previous governments have tried to adopt in a way that also civil servants can engage in experimenting, and also they have a right to fail, because if you're punished for failures, you're less likely to experiment. In some countries, we've seen these government-coordinated experiments, such as the basic income experiment in Finland, not linked to energy transitions, but quite an interesting example, and the challenge-led innovation programs in Sweden. And in transition context, we also come across a lot of different types of experimental forms of policymaking, where the policymakers and other stakeholders interact in. They're sometimes called policy labs or urban living labs. Transition arenas, there's quite a lot of conceptual development on actually how one can carry out transition arenas if someone's interested, and different forms of public-private partnerships. Next, please. Another area which has been found quite crucial in transitions is called intermediary actors. And in a way, I think the CETPartnership is one type of intermediary actor. There can be different types. They can be organizations, they can be networks. Sometimes they're individuals. But in transitions, the intermediaries are needed to link other actors, both new entrants, but incumbent actors, and the different kind of activities, skills, and resources taking place to really mobilize transition. And what empirical research has found is such intermediaries try to create this, first of all, this momentum for change. They can help to create new collaborations around these niche technologies or markets. They can coordinate experiments, but importantly also like pool and share knowledge and learning from a broader group of pilots and experiments taking place. Some are also able to take these kind of more disruptive roles. So in a way, transitions also require disrupting the old systems, and some intermediaries, if they have a sort of systemic mandate, they can take this on, or sufficient financial resources. And then this idea of influencing policymaking, but also helping other actors to understand new policies and implement them. And this picture is from a building energy efficiency related research project I did several years ago in the UK, but it just sort of illustrates how the intermediary actors can coordinate between innovators, consumers, construction companies, local authorities, and policymakers, and take different types of roles. Next, please. Just want to also talk about a little bit about transformation policies, so you can move on to the next slide. So this is a slide I borrowed from a colleague, but basically here you see on the blue, you see this idea from the multi-level perspective of a rising new system based on innovation and the decline of old systems. And there's a framework called Policy Intervention Points by Laura Kanger and colleagues, which basically says that there's 6 policy intervention points how policies should influence, stimulate these sort of innovation niches, accelerate their diffusion as part of the new system, destabilize the existing system. Also, what is found important in recent transition studies is address the broader repercussions of regime destabilization. So there might always be those who lose, and it's important that we sort of try to address potential injustices coming from the systems change. Coordinate multi-regime interaction. So if we think of energy transition, it doesn't happen in a silo from, for instance, mobility or other industrial transitions. And then finally, there's the 6th function is the landscape tilt. And the idea is that if you have a fully effective transition policies, you would try to address all these 6 points. Next, please. So if we think in particular, and of course there are many different policy domains, there's energy policy, there's climate policy, there's science and innovation policy, but recent research has also focused on how science and innovation policies should kind of move, not only supplying the push for new innovations, but enabling these broader transitions. And this means that you have to kind of introduce sustainability directionality into science and innovation policy more strongly. This would mean, for instance, if we have different countries or regional innovation or science strategies, you would include certain types of visions, targets. We see the example of EU missions, but also then how do we implement these strategies and programs that have taken on these sustainability transition related directionalities. Policy coherence is important because we know there are multiple policy domains which different, and even the same policy domain like energy policy can have different policy objectives such as sustainability, security, competitiveness, energy justice. So it's really vital that there's this kind of coordinated planning and implementation within and between the different sectoral policies, and then explicitly trying to identify where these policies might be clashing and removing these clashes where possible. And this is of course easier said than done. And there are of course always some some tensions between the different policy objectives, but I actually put weight on the identification part, that if we don't identify the potential conflicts and misalignments, it's harder to address them. It's important to increase attention to social and business model innovation. So this is a vital part alongside technological innovation, and then addressing the flip side of transition. So also taking into account that the energy transition, even though it mitigates climate change, it might have other negative consequences on the nature, on energy security or justice, and address these effects. So a few words about this energy justice, which has really come across as a new policy objective and a new objective for transition studies. This is a graph we did some 2 years ago for the Finnish climate change panel, where we created this evaluation questions for looking at climate policy justice, and the three round things are basically very, very well recognized in academic literature. So distributive justice is about how different costs and benefits, for instance, of the energy transition or climate policy are distributed. And this is not only about money, but what are the different kind of effects on, for instance, living and housing, work and livelihoods, health, mobility, and so on. Recognitive justice, in turn, places more attention on the kind of that not everyone has an equal setting in a society, and we have different types of more vulnerable groups, or for instance, indigenous peoples whose cultural livelihoods are at stake, and that policy should especially focus on those people and make the transition easier and reduce these kind of vulnerabilities. And procedural justice is about how do we actually make policies? Do we get our different stakeholders heard, and are there enough opportunities to participate? And then these elements of justice also happen on different scales, from local to global. Next, please. So really just to conclude that, really want to make this point that socio-technical change is not possible without this co-evolution of technologies with markets, policies, and practices. And this is what makes it difficult, because often, for instance, legal frameworks might be locked into the way how the old system works, and it might create barriers for new innovations to scale up. So these need to be kind of recognized and then gradually solved. And the issue that there's no way we can do this system level, this transition without some degree of disruption and tensions. And these are sort of important parts of the development that need to somehow be resolved in a way that the transition progresses, but that we don't create too much backlash for transitions, and different actors' perspectives are taken into account. I think networks like the CETPartnership can play a really important role in transitions. I mentioned this is kind of an intermediary actor, and that can act as a stimulator of learning and unlearning across different countries and organizations. And in a way, one aspect in this intermediation is this idea of continuation of projects as sites of learning and unlearning, so that we don't just go from project to project, but kind of try to create this continuity in between. And it really also requires understanding the socio-technical change dynamics and working towards systemic change. So really understanding how the different change processes, and even sometimes you might have two potentially competing niche innovations, or you might be able to align the different new technologies as part of a new functioning system. There's quite a lot of research evidence on the need for these kind of intermediaries to facilitate policy change and in implementation. And if anyone's interested, I'm sort of happy to share sources afterwards. And then kind of important aspects here is really this feeding knowledge of technological progress and market and societal barriers, as well as creating an understanding of how we can actually implement transformative policies in practice. How do the different actors face these policies? What are the problems in implementing them, and how do we create better policy making as a result? Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Very interesting and insightful. I would now as well like to welcome Michael to the stage.
Hello again.
Hi, Michael, and he will moderate the next panel discussion and Q&A. And Michael, I will hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Florian. Thank you, Paula, for your very inspiring presentation and keynote. And I want now to call a number of our leading experts of the transition initiatives on stage to discuss a bit what we have heard and how this is reflected in our daily practices and our daily work. I start with just following the order on the slide, August Stangeland. He's a leading expert of our transition initiative number 3 on hydrogen, CCUS, and biofuels. Then I welcome Gerdy Brembroek from the Netherlands. She is leading expert of transition initiative number 4, which is dealing with heating and cooling systems and also geothermal energy. Tina Ringesen is from the Swedish Energy Agency, our dear co-coordinator of this initiative and leading expert of transition initiative number 5, which is dealing with integrated regional energy systems. And Åsa Bergås Rensvik, also from Svea, is leading expert of the transition initiative number 6 on integrated industrial energy systems. And last but not least, Stefan Novak, who has spent many years in the field of PV innovation, but is now leading expert of our transition initiative number 7, that is dealing with integration in the built environment. Welcome on stage, everyone. We will try to deal a bit with, on the one hand side, the balls that Paula has played up for us, but also maybe one or the other question from the audience. I would start with a quick introduction round, 99 seconds for each of you. Just say a few words what your transition initiative is dealing with. I just mentioned the topic, but maybe you can say a few sentences in a minute, what you're working with, what your focus is, what your goals are at the moment, what you're trying to achieve. Åge, I start again with you.
Thank you, Mikael, and also thank you, Paula, for a very inspiring keynote here. That sets a very good scene for a good panel discussion here. I'm from the Transition Research Initiative number 3, and that is covering CCUS, carbon capture, utilization and storage, and also hydrogen and renewable fuels. So it's quite wide thematically. And related to what you presented, Paula, I totally agree that it is not only about developing technologies. We also need to focus on other barriers related to business model and and getting the innovations out there and implemented in the market. And that is what we also see in the technologies that we are covering in our TRI. CCUS is a technology where there have been very good technical developments, but the technology is still expensive, to put it that way. And we need to focus more on business models that can help reducing the cost of the technology and implementing it in the market. And you could also say the same for renewable fuels and also for hydrogen. Mikael, I think I leave it with that now for the introduction.
Thank you, Auge. So we got at least the first impression, and I go on with Gerdi, heating and cooling systems, geothermal. What are you working on with your transition initiative?
Yes, thank you. Heating and cooling, indeed. Why worry about heating and cooling? It's 50% of our energy demand in Europe, and it's also unevenly spread over the seasons. So we're looking at technologies really that forward our transition in the heating and cooling domain as well. We can see, if we're looking at the data for Europe, that 45% of our power production is now from renewable energy sources, but only 25% of our production of heating and cooling is from renewable energy sources. So we're working on the better, safer, cheaper technologies, and also on the storage technologies that we need to have to develop to make this transition possible for our society. Better, safer, cheaper, and always in connection with what is needed, what does the market need, and we're working on sharing that knowledge, but also connecting to the markets as well.
Thank you, Gerdi. Tina, when it comes to integrated regional energy systems, this is already one of our transition initiatives that is focusing very much on whole part systems of the energy system. So what is your approach in this transition initiative? What are you focusing on?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, as you say, like, we see that the regional energy systems have a significant role to play in the clean energy transition for the whole of Europe. So for the TRI 5, Integrated Regional Energy Systems, we really want to promote regional energy systems that can clearly accelerate Europe's energy transition. So that doesn't only mean developing technologies, but also making sure that they are actually anchored in the actual regional context, the geographical context and the regional system, so that we can utilize the local resources and opportunities and also address the challenges on the regional level. So yeah, our main objective is to accelerate regional energy transition processes, not only by technological development, although that as well, but also by nurturing active involvement of communities and companies and responsible bodies for energy planning. So yeah, we do try to take this kind of larger overarching perspective.
Thank you, Tina. Very ambitious. Awesome. When it comes to industrial energy systems and the transition of our industry, how does TRI 6 approach this challenge?
Thank you. Yes, as you say, we are looking into integrated in industrial energy systems, and we are working towards to reduce emission in industrial processes and enhance the resource efficiency and promote circular economy solutions. And we want to develop and then demonstrate technical solutions for industrial energy systems. so we can enable efficient carbon neutral industrial production sites. And we also see that industry energy should work as a part of the entire energy system, and enhancing the flexibility for needed in the future. And I will also say that I think that our initiative will contribute to the European energy transition by supporting projects that lead to faster market uptake and upscaling and increased global competitiveness.
Thank you also.
Thank you.
Stefan, you have been dealing many years with PV as a technology. Why is it so important to look at the integration of technologies in the built environment, and how is TRI7 approaching this question?
Thank you for the question, and I would also like to thank Paula for the very inspiring keynote, which also gave an example which serves very well into the focus that we are trying to achieve in TRI7. TRI7 is dealing with the integration of this energy system transition into the buildings or into the built environment. And referring to your question, Michael, of course, this is the case because buildings and built environment are areas where a lot of energy is used, and therefore
we lost you, Stefan, acoustically, not visually. You're working on it. Let's try if you come back. Maybe a power supply issue for the headphones. Can you try it without the headphones? While Stefan is working on it, I just want to say that we are unfortunately missing two other of our transition initiatives. One is the transition initiative #1 on, it's called energy systems. And so the main focus is system integration and integration of different infrastructures, starting, of course, with a very close focus on electrical energy systems, as electrification is an important part of the energy transition, but also looking on the overarching infrastructure development and integration of infrastructures in the energy sector. And then we are also missing TRI #2 that is dealing with all the power producing or power conversion technologies from wind over PV, ocean energy, and everything that can produce power from renewable sources. But I think we are able, with the expertise that we have on the table, to discuss the full portfolio of technologies and system perspectives that we have represented in our transition initiatives, which are actually building on the challenges that our joint research and innovation agenda is giving us. Stefan, I think you managed to come back. We hear you again, so maybe you can finalize your...
Yeah, I'm sorry, but my headset just quit when I was supposed to talk. Sorry for that. I hope it will work. So I just wanted to make a few points about the issue about buildings, where a lot of energy is consumed and where more energy can also be produced. That is one of the focus. But more particularly, the focus of this transition is really to take the dynamics of this whole sector into account, and also the complexity of buildings and built environment, the many stakeholders which are involved in these processes. And on top of that, the very slow and rather conservative approach that generally rules whatever is being implemented in buildings. So we try to take up these challenges, moving from individual technologies to integrating those into this built environment. And when I say integrate, I mean technically, aesthetically, business-wise, maybe digitally, and also socially integrating these technologies into the built environment. And that is very much what TRI 7 is about, not only for new buildings, of course, but also on existing buildings because of the very slow transition in this whole sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan. That also sounds like a very interdisciplinary challenge that we are facing here. Paula has given us in her keynote a broad spectrum of perspectives how we can look upon system transition from different perspectives. And before I come back to you, Paula, and maybe we can discuss and you can share with us also some ideas how this can be orchestrated in the environment of research and innovation funding programs. I want to go back to a second round with our transition initiative leading experts, asking you, I mean, we have this broad approach that tells us basically, yes, we want to look upon the different technologies. We want to help our European industries to keep being competitive on the global sector and connect into the global value chains. But also we want to look on the system transition in different parts of the energy systems, as we have this, as you have been showing already. We have this broad spectrum. What experiences did you make so far with this? And we want to share knowledge. We want to maximize the impact of our projects. But still, I mean, we are going a couple of years now, but still we are just at the beginning. I mean, we have now our third generation of projects running, but it's also different, like to look from a theoretical perspective on what we could maybe contribute to the energy transition in terms of creating knowledge, in terms of bringing projects together to work cross TRI. But in the practicalities of our everyday work, that looks, of course, a little bit different because we have to face what projects do we really have on the table, what is the portfolio, can we work with that, how are our resources and so forth. Nevertheless, I have experienced we have gained a lot during the first years already, and you have made, I think, good progress and experience. And maybe you can share a little bit of what positive experiences have you made in your TRIs? What worked during these first years? What worked well? Maybe also one or the other thing that you think we need to work more on, but more what positive achievements could you make in terms of inspiring, like Paula said, create momentum for the change by pooling knowledge or by other initiatives that you took. I tend to go again in the same order, if you don't mind, so I would simply start with Auge again.
Yeah, thank you, Mikael. We have many good projects in the portfolio focusing on technology development, and some of those projects are soon entering into their final years. So we can expect quite a lot of good technical results. They are bringing the technologies further up the technology readiness level. But what will be interesting to see in the end is how we can work together with a project and not only develop technology, but also address the other barriers, business models, getting the technologies implemented in the market. And within CETP, we have two very interesting working groups on knowledge sharing and on knowledge community, and the second one on impact network. So now the interesting stuff within CETP will start when these groups start working together with the projects, and hopefully we will manage to do something more than only technology development. I hope we can contribute to getting the technologies deployed in the market, and we certainly have the potential to do so. And if we all within CETP work hard together, I'm quite sure we can make a significant contribution to bringing many of the good technologies one step further, helping with business models, politics, incentives, etc. But in the end, it's not us defining the policies. That is something for the decision makers. So we should also strive to establish good connections to the policymakers, both on national level, on regional level, and European level. I think we have a potential for making a difference there as well.
Thank you, Olga. I learned from your reports, internal reports, that you had already last year, but also this year, very interesting meetings with kind of a multi-stakeholder approach, where you were not only talking with the projects or to the technicians that are kind of developing the solutions, but also involving other stakeholders in the field to inspire this learning process. Can you share maybe one just a short impression of how this went, and maybe one key outcome of this?
Yeah, last month we invited all ongoing projects in the TRI 3 to a workshop, a physical workshop in Leipzig in Germany. We had 30 projects on stage presenting their results, and we had 60 to 70 participants, a very good audience. So we spent 2 days. The first day was dedicated to presentation from the projects, while the second day was dedicated to interactive sessions, where we focused on cross-cutting issues like social awareness, societal barriers, business models, how to move from research to industrial activities. And this was really good. We brought to the table a lot of good ideas for how the projects, together with CETP, can help on these barriers. One example was that the projects, they are developing very good technologies, so they could also develop educational tools. They could also be more present on social media. Maybe they could develop some very good videos and highlight them on YouTube. But it's very easy to put a video on YouTube. It's very difficult to get it spread to the right stakeholders. And the projects, they were quite clear that they would need help from us to do that. But this is also challenging for me. I'm working with technology, not with communication, so it's not so easy for me to understand how to help them as well. But this shows that we have some good ideas to work with.
Very good, Olga. Thank you for sharing this. It's, I think, inspiring to hear how you are working and approaching this yearly. Some experiences from your field over the first years of the Clean Energy Transition Partnership.
Yes, I would like to point out the importance of the various levels of engagement and also knowledge sharing, because we're sharing the knowledge within our heating and cooling group. But of course, these projects also need to reach out and need to connect to to stakeholders in their own countries, to stakeholders, well, maybe globally, but there's different levels of engagement, and also the CETPartnership knowledge community is looking at the energy transition rather than technology. Is more of what is the role of my technology in the future energy system. This was also what we had in a knowledge sharing workshop last month as well, where both system-oriented and technology-oriented projects worked together, exchanging. And what Paula said about deep learning really triggered me, because that was exactly what we try to do there, to step from the project level into into understanding what your project, well, one of the funded project would mean to the energy transition. So I think that these are aspects that that I think are important to keep on working on.
Thank you very much, Gerdy, for sharing your experiences. Tina, integrated regional energy systems. It's not an easy field, but I think we have made interesting progress. We could build on some achievements that we have also been making in a former network. So how are you feeling about the knowledge management work or also the stakeholder engagement?
I think for our call modules, they typically have a requirement already that projects should involve stakeholders and should be anchored in existing roadmaps or existing infrastructure. And we also clearly state that we want them to create networks and make their projects in a context that can last beyond the project time. So I think that we kind of set the table for a lasting collaboration and deeper, well, that it really kind of settles and has an impact in the long run. But we also do things actively to support this. We have had some activities with our knowledge community where we have asked them to co-create together and share their experiences regarding scaling, for example, and what barriers there are to scaling their projects and ideas, and how to overcome that. We also have, as you have, that you know very well, the so-called No Rest initiative, the network of regional energy system transition labs, where we kind of want to initiate and support the development of a network of so-called transition labs, structures that can really be part of the change in the energy transition. So yeah.
Thank you, Tina. Maybe one specific question. I remember we have been building this huge network of living labs. It was also mentioned before that this is an interesting setup. So do you see these living labs connecting to the RTDI projects? Is that working? Can you see that in the projects?
I hope so, but I can honestly not say that I have personally seen how that plays out in practice. But yeah, we encourage it, obviously.
Yeah. So here we see the practical challenges then again.
Yeah.
Awesome. What experiences could you make? How is it, to approach industry in that field, also in the environment where we have also other strong initiatives that deal particularly with the transition of industry, the decarbonization of industries. Of course, we need to find kind of our role also in respect of these other initiatives, but concentrating on the integration of those industries in the energy system. And I think there was also a very interesting initiative last year to bring TRI-1 system integration and system together with your initiative on industry systems. What experiences can you share?
Thank you. Yes, I think it's, as you said, we had together with TRI-1, that was difficult to say, we had a workshop about flexibility, and I think it was good to bring different projects from our different TRIs together and share knowledge and different perspective. And I think in general that's the strength of CETPartnership, that we have a big network and the possibility of pooling our knowledge and not only our funding, but our knowledge and also learning. And as Paula mentioned, the importance of influence on the policy. And I think that's maybe something that we could work on for the future. I think we have a very good already work with our knowledge community where we are systematically collecting and sharing insights from our projects and our TRIs. And that's something that we could work further with, I think. And I think also we have a very good knowledge sharing between our TRIs, which I think is important for the overall energy system transformation, that we have both technologies and we have the systems, and we need both to move forward. Was something else I wanted to say. And also, of course, if you look in the industry perspective, the importance of collaboration with stakeholders. And we have a very good collaboration, for instance, with Net Zero Industry Mission. And so I think we need to learn from each other and pool our resources over the borders of different missions and partnerships to move forward.
Thank you, Åsa. Stefan, a very specific field that you are working in, you mentioned it already. What could you achieve in the first years? What observations could you make?
Yes, thank you for the question. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Yeah, I had to change my audio settings. Well, as you can imagine, the building area is a very vast field, and the TRI-7 project started maybe a little bit on the technology side, where you could almost see them as part of TRI-2, where the individual technologies are being developed. And gradually over time, these projects have moved more into taking into account some of the integration challenges, which I mentioned before, but still keeping it sufficiently focused, because there is no one-size-fits-all approach in this area, and not a top-down approach neither. So we very much try to build on very selective, focused approaches. And once these are established, to connect them and to see whether there are learnings across the projects, which can be then brought forward on a system level. And we find a lot of interest from the project developers to exchange their experiences on that level, rather than working on the big single solutions, which are probably not realizable, at least at that large scale. So I think we're moving into this, and the communication aspect is really trying to build on the concrete projects rather than on the big concepts.
Thank you, Stefan. Paula, thank you very much for being so patient. I just wanted you to kind of hear a bit more about the practical experiences that we are having in the different fields that we're working in. And my question to you is, I mean, you have highlighted the role of learning and unlearning in your keynote. What is really the role? Because this is, of course, a very broad perspective on the whole process, and I think it needs exactly the process. What we are struggling, or not struggling, but what we are asking ourselves always is, what is the role of our TDI in this, so research, technology development, demonstration. How far can we go with innovation, with system innovation? Also, of course, with the framework that we have as funders. We have touched upon this before also a bit already, that we might have to widen the framework, maybe also of instruments. But what role do you see can we really play here in the practical orchestration also of these learning and unlearning processes? Do you have any perspectives on the how?
Yes, thank you, and very interesting to hear what the different groups are doing. And of course, this is really difficult question, and I think we certainly need a lot of RTD in a general sense of developing system integration and the different technologies. But I also think that there's a lot of perhaps one of the things that hinders transition is how do we communicate this to the average people and to politicians. And sometimes politicians are also like, they might not have the technical expertise or the system expertise. And I don't know if it's the place for the CETPartnership or its member organizations, but I certainly think this kind of knowledge exchange would be very useful, because I also feel like what I like about is I like visiting like different new technology sites and projects to really learn. I'm a social scientist, so I don't have a technical background, but I think one aspect of learning really should be this learning between the technological side and the sort of policy making side, but also the more practical side. And I think this is also a way to get support. And the chat had this question about how to address or how to tune down the lobbies of outdated technologies. And that's, of course, a tricky thing, because, of course, people are lobbying where they get their income from. Often they believe in it. There's not a simple solution, but I don't know that some industries, for instance, they could try to repurpose assets in the clean technology sector, but unfortunately we also see backwards development. I think the British Petrol withdrawing from the renewable energy development. So unfortunately we are facing, and some of this resistance from lobbies or from policy making, I think this could be addressed with improved knowledge of what we're actually technically capable of and how the world could look like. And I also think I had this question for you, because I'm not very well, I've heard the CETPartnership, but I'm not very well aware it. Do you also have like a vision that goes across your different transition initiatives, vision of what the future energy system will look like in, I don't know, 20 years, 30 years? Because sometimes also this kind of vision is both important in terms of the transitions, because it provides this directionality. And of course, we know that this vision might also change when we learn more about the technological solutions, but also communicating the new developments to decision makers and others. It's not a direct question, direct answer to your question, but sort of thinking along those lines. And I also wanted to say, from the previous comments, I really wanted to say, I think what Tina said about how you're kind of trying to tie your work with kind of existing context and programs and create this lasting collaboration really seems like a good way to go. Of course, sometimes what's happening outside, sometimes it's supportive of what you want to do, sometimes it's not, so it might be more difficult to find these connections. And for Stefan, I also had a particular comment, because some years ago, I was particularly studying building energy efficiency, both in Finland, but also in the UK. And there, at least, I mean, maybe not so much on the energy production side, because average people are not involved in it, but in the building side, it's interesting how the sociocultural aspects play a role, because people associate living to certain types of, like different countries have different types of traditional types of building and ways of construction, which sometimes might hinder this development. And I certainly noticed that in the UK, that when you have this appreciation of Victorian style housing, which are not energy efficient, it's kind of harder to stimulate this type of change. But yeah, so this was a bit of a broader answer, but I really think that the key somewhere is also this communication to non-technical experts, alongside, of course, advancing your own knowledge about the technical possibilities and what you can do.
Thank you very much, Paula. Does anyone from the other panelists want to reflect of what has been said, but you have been directly addressed. I just want to say to your question about the vision, I think that's really an interesting question. And I think with the development of our strategic research agenda, somehow we have, I think, worked on this vision, bringing everything together into one picture or into one paper. But still, I think that's somehow, yeah, puzzling me how we can work on this joint vision. And my idea at the moment is that maybe we could also work with the CETPlan steering group together. This is now newly formatting with our high-level representatives, also Henriette, that was here today. And maybe we can work on this vision together also between these different levels, because we on our level also sometimes are struggling that we maybe are not necessarily the strategic thinkers, or we need at least also the other levels in our institutions to back us up in this joint strategy work. So let's see how we can proceed with this. Is there something from the panelists that you want to react on what Paula has said? If this is not the case, Auge, you are muted if you want to.
Thank you, Mikael. Paula, you mentioned the importance of communicating and reaching out to non-technical stakeholders, and I totally agree. This is really important, but it's also very challenging. Within CETP, we have a lot of good projects, and they are staffed with researchers. We managed to reach out to industry, but communicating and teaming up with decision makers and politicians, that is very often quite challenging. So maybe that is where we can put in a lot more effort to try to get a good communication with decision makers nationally and in Europe. I think that could be very beneficial for us.
Thank you, Auge. Any other comments? If this is not the case at the moment, I have another question to you, Paula. That is one of the ideas that we always had also in one of our pre-successor networks was that working with what we understand as innovation ecosystems is important for looking on the transition on various levels and from different perspectives. And one idea that we always had was, can we have we call them the need owners, so the ones that at the end should implement this or work with these solutions, can we have them on board much earlier in the process before we develop the next generation of solutions or whatever? Can we have them on board to co-design these solutions, or at least help us to understand what is needed, what the need is for them to, because thinking that they want to achieve the energy transition, they need technology for this. How would it need to look like? How do you reflect on such an approach? And do we have good examples where this already was done in a successful way? Do you have any advice for us?
Yeah, I certainly know of colleagues who've worked kind of on this side, particularly in the building sector, but also otherwise, that I think really involving the users is really important, because then you might also find out that, okay, they might want something else than the engineers are thinking about. And of course, it requires how do you actually construct such processes that people are willing to participate in them. But I think there are some examples, and there are also, I mentioned intermediaries. So one category of intermediaries are actually user-side intermediaries. So in transition processes, that we actually have these representative bodies of the users, that the transitions are also sort of accommodating this side of things. And I actually think it also links to this idea of justice, because justice is also about how do you involve different types of stakeholders to projects. And of course, they might not be often you might attract people who are really interested in technological development, but then the majority of users might be something that they're just looking for and the easier the new solutions are from the user side perspective, and then maybe the complicatedness can be a little bit hidden. I think that could be the solution. And at one point, I remember personally thinking that we'd have more. We often had like energy services for commercial actors in buildings and things, but we didn't have energy service companies that much available for individual households. I think that's now gradually increasing. But the idea is that basically, as users, you just want heating, you want lighting, you want power. You don't necessarily, unless you're the kind of person who's really excited about innovation, which some are, but most of the people, you would just benefit from kind of a fairly simple interface where someone else is doing the work. So I don't know if this is something that a way to have these user perspectives. But how do you find those users who are not the technological or energy geeks? Like, for instance, I'm really fascinated about energy, so I'm always happy to be on board, but you perhaps want more mainstream people on board.
Exactly. I think that's really challenging, and maybe for a last round of reflection in the panel, I mean, these are really challenging approaches. Do we have any experience with that? What feeling do we have that kind of also the instruments that we are having are supporting such actions? I mean, Tina, you mentioned our trial with the Norest initiative, which tries kind of to build this from the other angle, but it's also not easy, because always the question is, where do the resources come from, and how can we give projects the resources to work with those aspects? Do you have any experiences that you can share here with us and also with Paula?
Well, I mean, you really nailed it there with the resources, because it creates this kind of catch-22 that I have also experienced when I myself was a researcher, that sometimes you can get research funding, but it's hard to get the funding to actually get the research out there and to actually like connect people with different types of knowledge. Like if you have a living lab or a hub somewhere, they might get all of their funding from various research programs, but then where do they get the money for collecting all of that knowledge all in one and sharing it with others who might have similar types of knowledge? I really hope that we can kind of get the larger, I mean, this is a political question, but like a better and more different types of funding to really bridge that gap, I think.
Thank you, Tina. Stefan?
Yes, I think it's not only the funding question. Even if funding is available, and I am involved in programs in Switzerland where the transition is at stake in terms of involving societal dimensions and the sciences which go along with this. And I think it is also a challenge in terms of the mindset that you need to work in this area on a systemic level, not only focusing on the technologies, but also taking the other dimensions into account. And there is a difficulty to get everybody on board in this sense, and not losing their interest or becoming too superficial from a certain stakeholder perspective. So I think there's a lot still to do in that area beyond the funding issue.
Thank you, Stefan. Before we focus on the questions of our dear audience, a final round from the panel. When when we reflect on what we have been discussing today and what Paula gave us and what we shared here, is there one idea that you can raise that you have in your transition initiative, just in one sentence, like for the future, what would be your dream or your focus, where you think if we could improve this, that would help us in our field to contribute to the real transition aspect? Is there something that you have in mind where you say, we think this is our approach, this we will focus because this is important, particularly in our field? A very quick round, just 1 or 2 sentences. Åge, do you have something, an idea?
Yes, I would probably like to highlight what I mentioned earlier, the knowledge sharing workshop we had in Leipzig. We will do similar workshops annually. We will be in Madrid next year. And what we will try to focus on is to bring in more industrial stakeholders so that we can establish a connection between our projects and industry. And if we also can manage to get some decision makers on board, I think that would be a good dream, so that we can communicate with them as well. Then that is what is coming to my mind.
Thank you, Åge. Gary, any spotlight that you can make?
Yes, well, what's coming to my mind listening to all of this is that there's so much we need to do, and at the same time, we also need to keep track of the big aim, and that is the energy transition, which also requires new technologies and new things. We're seeing it's absolutely not discussed in this panel now, but the congestion of the electricity grid is becoming a huge problem also in my country. You don't see it as an end user probably, but industrial end users are confronted with it today in my country. So I think that doing what's right at a project level, but connecting this to the big challenges that we see in front of us is important. And talking about what we're doing and what we're achieving is also important to understand what we can contribute. So keeping communicating, that is probably what I take.
Thank you, Gary. Tina, do you have any highlight where you think this is important in your TRI to focus on?
I think I've mentioned some of the things that we do that I hope that we can continue to focus on. But something that we have been discussing is whether we should try to, I don't know if this is possible, but like also involve more funding agencies that might be able to fund not only technological research, but also social sciences. Because we do really need, as Paula mentioned, like the connection between society and technology. So I think that would be useful.
Thank you. Asa, a spotlight.
Thank you. Yes, there are several things I was thinking about in our TRI we are discussing, and also think it's really important to look at the next level for the projects, for the commercialization and upscaling, and the difficulties and the gap for the next level. And I think also, as Åge mentioned, the importance of the stakeholders and in our case, the end users for the industry, to have a good collaboration, and that we are focusing on the important issues for the end users, and also the social aspects. I think is really important. The acceptance of new technologies and the moving in the society. It's happening quite fast for many people, and they don't have the knowledge about it. So, but that's a challenge, how to reach out, and maybe we can work more together with our funding organization and our partners in different national aspects of that. Thank you.
Awesome. Stefan, do you have a spotlight?
Well,
I think this is a key.
What comes to my mind here is sort of when I look at TRI 7 and everything which was said before, then within TRI 7 we have the focus on the built environment, and the challenges that all of you addressed are all combined in TRI 7. The social aspect, the aesthetics, the public relevance, etc. So we have this challenge of addressing all these issues and still trying to find meaningful approaches which then will change something as we move forward. And therefore, there's a limit to how much complexity you can build into projects to address all these issues while still keeping a focus and becoming concrete and tangible in terms of the results that you achieve in a 2 or 3 year project. So our take within TRI 7 is, as I mentioned at the beginning, is while taking this big picture into account, we try to still focus and not lose this focus in order to provide this meaningful results. One element, however, which I see, which has not been mentioned before, and I like to relate to the first keynote that we heard this morning about the European competitive situation facing global players. I take the example of solar PV, which I know the best, but there are, of course, others like batteries or EVs, etc. And in particular, in the built environment, and I think this is also true for some other aspects of systems, there is a place, in my view, where there is also room for industrial activities, taking the building industry, possibly the construction industry, etc. And these examples show that we should not only look at the technologies and their competitiveness within the global scale, but their implementation on a local level and the circumstances that are valid for those local implementations.
Thank you very much for this round. Paula, you have already particularly addressed some of the questions of our audience, and I think also many of you others have read some questions, and I think many things have already been touched. There was one interesting question that I wanted maybe to raise to Paula for the finally, that was about how do you think that RDI projects could address the various dimensions of justice? I mean, this is really a very specific question, but how can we address that, please?
I mean, I posted a link to this climate change panel report. It, of course, not applicable, the questions we post for all contexts, but I think in a sense, one could think about in a project, what is the sort of expected distribution, like who will benefit and who will not benefit from an outcome if a new technology gets scale up. You could think, are there particular people that would be more vulnerable and affected by it? Does it involve indigenous people? I know that's in or otherwise special cultural groups. And then I think with the process or procedural justice dimension, we kind of little bit address this. You could involve also sort of other stakeholders, not like necessarily companies or policymakers, if you have project steering groups or thinking, just having a broader perspective. And this is also something we've talked in general in relation to innovation policy, that can you somehow broaden the perspective to non-typical innovation actors to get insights, new type of insights, how to think about things. So I think that's the way I would, but you could look at the report as a basis to kind of understand that there are these different ways of looking at justice, and what are the little things that we could ask from ourselves when we do this. And then also think, are there ways to support, in particular, I think technologies that have the potential to reduce energy poverty are important. Then how are those who are living in rented accommodation and have less money, how will they, for instance, access those technologies? So I think these are some of the questions that could be tied into, like, if you're developing something, you could also think, how could, for instance, the public sector or some other scheme support the access? I just wanted to also reflect, because I did like how the discussion in the final round of comments also went to this broader, larger context. So I think the energy transition is interesting because we are talking about sort of more detailed innovation and learning processes, but at the same time, we're talking about the whole scale and the systemic interconnections. And I think what is a challenge, of course, that the state of the electricity transmission and distribution networks is not the same in different countries and regions. There's this vast needs for knowledge and skills development associated, but also I think what's important is understanding the broader context. I think Tanya in the chat already mentioned this kind of societal polarization that we're witnessing. We've seen the geopolitical turbulence. We know that the energy transition has different types of impacts on nature, depending on how and where it's built, or water bodies. And then finally, Stefan also referred to this EU policy context, which I find quite interesting, because when one looks at now the Clean Industrial Deal and EU energy policy, we sort of see both, of course, energy policy for providing Europe with the necessary energy, but then there's what I like to call energy industrial policy, which is more focused on the production of technologies that we could then perhaps export outside Europe and improve our competitiveness. And whether these two lead to the same direction is, of course, this important question that we are tackling and trying to sort of find synergies between the technological development and improving Europe's competitiveness, but also just the energy provision and energy justice in Europe.
Thank you, Paula. I think in 3-4 minutes, Florian will step in to sum up. But I think this was an interesting move at the end, to move at the higher, from the very detailed questions to the societal question back again. And I mean, this one comment in the chat that was about silencing the lobby groups, like, was inspiring me a little bit to think, yeah, is it really? I mean, of course, I mean, the real lobbyists, I don't know if we really need to listen to them, but aren't there a lot of people out there that have valuable concerns about the developments that we are undergoing, and somehow then we come through the door and say, look, you need to do good to the world, and we need to save the world and to save our climate and so forth, and they just have the feeling like, okay, you are overwhelming with these things. Where's the connection to the problems or the pressure that I feel in my daily life, or in my direct kind of recipiency of problems? And I think that is also what your last comment was pointing at, Paula, and maybe to our TRI leading experts, are you facing in your area kind of a turn in the discussion, how we approach this? I mean, not only from the point of like, yeah, we need to do good to the world, but really more from the point of what are the aspects where we can contribute to competition, to improve our daily lives and so forth. Do you feel that there is a change in the discussion that is triggered by the by the global discussion or societal mood that we're in at the moment? Do you feel that also in your expert discussions, or is the expert discussion quite resilient, let's say, against this?
Yeah, Mikael, it's a big question. I feel there is a change because the geopolitical situation worldwide is different. To make it very short, there's a huge focus on energy security. So there are some changes, but nevertheless, the transition technologies we are developing within CETP, they're just becoming more important. So it doesn't change that much for us. It just makes us more important, I would say.
Thank you, Åge. I mean, I think it was good for a last statement of the panel. Florian, Stefan has also a take on this. Stefan, you are muted.
Yes, sorry. I think what we are maybe forgetting a little bit, it is not about the transition which is coming in the future. It's a transition which is ongoing. We have quite considerable developments in the past decades. So we can hopefully accelerate this transition. We can hopefully expand it. And I see the discussion going into this direction. We can shape it possibly with new solutions and go beyond the pure technology aspects and then really benefit from the system relevance that we can create by combining different technologies. This all sounds very hypothetical, but in the present picture where things are moving very fast, also in this area market-wise, I think this is an encouraging signal that we are becoming more relevant. Even if there are voices that say it will not work and you can forget this approach. I think there is good hope on this side.
Positive outlook at the end from Stefan. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much, everyone in the panel. Thanks, Paula, for being with us. And I give back to Florian.
Thank you, everybody, for being such a great and informative panel and the deep insights into the DRI, and especially thank you to Paula for her keynote and her contribution. We will now head into the lunch break until 1300. That's the outlook. We will have a short introduction, and then we will go into project presentations, have a Q&A sessions with 2 breakout rooms, and then a short wrap up, and then we'll finish at 15:30. Next slide, please. Yeah. Attention, please, for the afternoon session starting at 1300. There is a different link to join our conference. You can find this link via B2Match. That's the platform you registered from. So please be aware, again, attention, it's not the same link as this meeting. There is another link that you can find via B2Match. So please join via there. We as well share all the necessary links in the chat. Thanks to our organization and team at Baum. So have a nice lunchtime. And take care and see you back at 1300 after the lunch break. Take care.